Hi everyone and welcome to the Power Platform Show. Today I have Ben Hosking. He's a Senior Solution Architect at PowerObjects currently. And we're going to talk about his consulting journey, blogging for many years. He's worked for 3 large consulting practices, global GSIs across his career. And so I really want to dip into that and see lessons that we can all learn from his experience. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/230. Hi Ben, welcome to the show.
Hi, it's nice to be here.
Good to have you on the show. You know, I've known you in the industry for many years now. You're a well-known name, often known as the Hosk or Ben Hoskings. And as I say, years ago, I first met you. I think you, not in person, but I think you sent some questionnaire. You're doing some interviews with MVPs way back in the day, and that's when you first were on my radar. So I know you've got a lot of experience, and I'd love to dig into a bit of that in the next few minutes on the show. But before we do get started, can you tell me where you live, work, and play?
Okay, yeah. So I live in Solihull, which is near Birmingham in England. Currently work for PowerObjects in the UK. And since COVID has appeared, I've been working from home and had a good couple of months of homeschooling and working.
So what was the name of the area that you're in?
It's Solihull, which is about 8 miles outside of Birmingham.
Okay. Birmingham area. I don't know that, I'm not sure if I went to Birmingham, because in the 18 months I was living in London, I'm not sure that I got there, and I definitely haven't heard of Solihull before. What's the best thing to do in Birmingham?
It's a good question. I guess we've got quite a lot of things to see. We've got a few zoos around, and from my point of view, we've got a lot of national trusts, which they do kind of walks and kind of classic old buildings, which they keep going and get people to view them. So yeah, there's a lot of those around here, so we get to go for a walk with the kids there.
So a lot of history.
Yes, yeah, there's quite a lot of history. Yes, it's good. It's the second biggest city in England, but it's more like lots of little towns sort of squashed together. Yeah.
Makes sense. How did you land in technology? How did you find your way into the career you're currently in?
Yeah, I think I did. I wasn't really sure. I guess when did I go to university? Around 96. So I think I'd liked to play kind of computer games and stuff. And I kind of did IT, not programming, at university, and then I got my first job and I was in a support desk for supporting supply chain software. I always think it builds kind of character working on a support desk, dealing with, you never know what you're going to get, but dealing with supply chain questions was quite an interesting way of learning it. And then in that company, that was a kind of stepping stone where you learnt the product and then you could move to be like a consultant or a developer. So from there, I moved to be a Java developer and then continued being a Java developer for probably, 6 years, and then moved to .NET and then found CRM4.
Wow. So when you say you found CRM4, did you get assigned a project, or how did you start getting involved with it?
Yeah, so we were .NET, we're delivering that, and then a customer wanted CRM4, and it kind of instantly appealed to me because I found when you're a .NET developer, you kind of did a lot of what I call boring framework plumbing stuff, like doing security and authentication and setting up databases, and all this kind of stuff you needed to do to create an application. And then when I saw Dynamics, it did all that for you, and you could just concentrate on creating the business functionality that the business wanted, so you could skip all that other stuff. And now it's even better because I don't have to worry about servers or keep maintaining them. You can just use it and it does what you need to, and it just gives you more time to focus on turning the requirements into solutions.
So is that what led you to kind of stay with it rather than continue down the .NET path as your sole focus? I take it that one project obviously morphed into another project, and before long you were doing it all the time. What was that journey for you?
Yeah, so it was CRM4, which was a bit interesting to deal with. And then CRM 2011 came out, and then I was doing a project for that, and I just thought it was a great way to create solutions quickly. And I also didn't like to do as a developer, I don't like doing front end like stuff to make it look good. I just wanted to do it. So CRM also or Dynamics took all the pain out of that. So you could create the forms, not always the prettiest, but you could do them and they were functional and they worked. And then it had just lots of hooks to create other customizations around, and then since then, Microsoft has sort of consistently improved it, and you get more functionality. Whereas now, what used to take weeks to sort of create plugins and code, you can now do with flows and Power Apps, in hours or days, and with the connectors, everything's connected in as well. So you can just really create. It's not about how do I do this? Can I do this? It's what does the project need, and what options should I use to do that? So it's a much quicker way. And I think also the people in Dynamics, the projects are different because you work very closely with the customer. So you get their requirements, you're discussing it with them, and then you can almost like create a quick prototype or the real thing, and then get their feedback, because it's almost impossible really to capture requirements in user stories or like on paper, because people need to see it and use it to understand, is this going to work for me? Does it do what I want? Because people are not very good at saying what they want, but they're good at identifying what they don't want once you've made it.
Yeah, that makes sense. At what point did you decide this was going to be my career? As in that you were going to really, this is the tech you're going to double down on, rather than, there's a massive tech landscape out there. At what point did you consciously go, you know what, I'm going to now seek a career or develop my skills around this, and this is going to be my career moving forward?
I think it was definitely around the CRM 2011, because I thought it was at that time, it wasn't as kind of popular as it is now. It was a sort of more of a niche, because .NET development was probably more popular and more common, and that was a kind of a new technology. So I thought this is a good opportunity to learn that. So I was doing Dynamics at work, and then outside of work, I thought, how do I speed up my learning? So I did the certifications. So I did all the CRM 4 and the CRM 2011, all of the certifications for those, and then I would write blogs to learn as well. So I was trying to learn inside work and outside of work to kind of speed it along. I also felt that the projects kind of work towards my strengths a bit more, where I like to sort of be involved with people and worked together with people. And so the Dynamics projects tend to be sort of more agile and work that way. So those kind of, you could develop fast on top of Dynamics, and you could work with the customers. And then so I just could continue to work in that way. And then since then, Dynamics has improved as well, so that it delivers much bigger projects now than at the start. And so it's good because it gives you the opportunity to work on big projects and deliver those. So yeah, it's around 2011, CRM 2011, and that's where I kind of kept going. I even worked through the 2013, where it kind of took a nosedive when Microsoft went a bit bonkers, kind of with Windows 8, and CRM 13 kind of took a step back almost.
Interesting. Before COVID, let's just wind back a few months. What was your typical day, week, month in the office like? What did it consist of? What kind of activities would you be doing? What would be a typical day that you could define?
So my roles were on the project, so we're usually kind of 3 or 4 days on site and then 1 or 2 days off site. So, and the projects the last 3 projects have tended to be quite big. So one was 2.5 years, another was a year, and then this last one is 6 months. So they're often teams of teams. So it's a lot of sort of catching up with everyone and making sure, as a kind of senior person on the project, you want to make sure that everyone is kind of following the plan, doing what they need to do, and if they're kind of, we've got any troubles or problems, how do we resolve those as a team? So it's kind of a stand-ups. You have a few stand-ups, usually one with, after my roles are often solution architect, scrum master, so it'd be kind of stand up with kind of my scrum team, and then another stand up with the other scrum teams. They'd often be like 3 or 4 other Scrum teams working at the same time. So you need to make sure have we got any common problems? Sort of, do we need to help each other? Do you have any dependencies with the other teams? And then making sure that we've got the plan, and we're not. It's usually like dealing with any problems on big projects. You tend to have big problems. So it'd be kind of those type of things, making sure we're all working together really, and then sort of working with the customer to showing them, usually the product owner, showing them what we're doing, clarifying the stories. I always like to get the stories clarified and sort of set up front so we both have an agreement of really what we're doing. And it's better to change a story than it is to do the work and change the work and go back. So those kind of things. And then for the teams, we often have kind of work between, for the like PowerObjects or CapGemini before me, collaborating as a team together, sort of creating those best standards, demoing. I think that teams should be kind of like a hive mind, because what you want to avoid is everyone making the same mistakes. You want to be sharing the knowledge so that, if there's a best practice, that we can all do it, all pick that up. And if there's things to avoid, then one person makes the mistake, shares the knowledge, and we all avoid it. So that kind of collaborating and trying to get some benefits of work, being a part of a big team and sharing the knowledge.
So when you say you're working on site, you're talking about physically being in the customer's premise, I take it?
Yes, yeah. Usually for three or so days a week, you'd be on site working with the customer, kind of collaborating with them.
Mm-hmm. Which is definitely the typical consulting type model, right? And the companies I've worked in, generally, I would see staff go out on a project, and I might not see them for 9 months or a year or longer, right? Because they go from their home and their office becomes really the customer's office. But of course, that's all changed with COVID. Tell me, how has that changed? Because I wanted to kind of get this flip view. What is your work day now and work life now, being that, you're predominantly, I assume, working from home?
Yes, so PowerObjects and their parent company HCL kind of, I think it must have been like 4 months, said, no one's going to the office or any office now. So, yeah, there's a lot more meetings. So I sometimes have kind of struggled to have lunch because you're trying to find that time to have your lunch, find a spare 30 minutes in there. But it's involving, a lot. So you kind of have meetings with the customer, with your team, to try to make sure that we're all collaborating. And it's interesting because you can not even see people. So we've been trying to take steps to sort of turn on our video cameras to see each other, and try and have just a session where we're just talking about like things at the end of the day, non-work related stuff, because you lose all that. So I kind of been thinking it works quite well for if you've been together on a team for a few months. I think it'd be really tricky if you joined a company and you only worked remotely, because you kind of would use the opportunity to get to know your work colleagues, outside of work. What do they like to do? Because you need to build relationships to work efficiently together. You kind of need to know each other so that you can, talk openly and honestly with each other. And without having the relationship with anyone, it'd be kind of much more difficult to do. And then all this other extra knowledge you get from people who they just tell you things about the company or the project that you don't always sort of aim to get, but they sort of appear naturally or organically. And so there's sort of less of that happening at the moment. But on the plus side, there is less commuting.
So interesting. I've run teams that have been multi-geographied and, very agile driven, scrum driven. And what we found worked effectively is at the start of a project, even though the team members were multi-geographied, we'd bring them into the same geography. So we'd take them, for example, to the customer's site, fly them in. And for around the first week to 2 weeks, we would have all the teams working in the same location. And this is for a project that would, go well beyond a year. even molded, a couple of years in length. But what we found was that created that really good gel. So therefore, everything was done with video cameras on afterwards for everyone back in their general locations. And you're right, there's a cementing of relationship done in that 2 weeks where they, ate, drink, and, probably partied a bit together as well. That then kind of set the foundation for the following period of time, which was incredible. How do you think we handle that going forward, where we might not be able to have those kind of on-site bringing the team together, and new projects are going to kick off from the start with remote teams?
Yeah, I mean, it is going to be a challenge. And also, it works. There's like two elements to it. One, there's your own team in terms of the sort of people there. And in my current, we're kind of 50-50 in terms of onshore and offshore. So we have that already. But there's also working with the customer, because you need to have trust in a project that they sort of feel that you're giving them good advice, and that they're going to sort of go with your decisions, or you're going to help guide them with the best options, and things like that. So it's almost, I think you need to do that remotely, and have kind of ice-breaking sessions. I always remember some of the best things of when I was a Scrum Master. We'd have our retrospectives, and then during that process, I'd get everyone to draw a picture of how the sprint went with a theme. So I think we did films, and then so we had people drawing like Lion King, and sort of drawing these quite awful pictures, but it was quite funny. And then we'd also like kind of try and share some piece of information, like your first kind of worst job, or the first music you bought, and these kind of facts actually gave us sort of things to unite over, because we'd know these sort of random amusing facts about each other that sort of made you laugh, and gave everyone a connection together. I think the more that COVID goes on, and the more remote working we do, I think that like you're saying here, that this will become more important, and people will take more time to do things like this, to create opportunities for people to get to know each other and build those relationships. And for more effective kind of remote working, I think that's part of it we'll have to start doing. At the moment, I think it's a lot of the teams are probably already created, and they've already done this, so it's not as important. But in the future, I think there will be more emphasis on this, because you'll find the best teams with the ones who have a really good connection, and they will work better together.
It is definitely going to be interesting. You've worked across your career for some of the biggest global players in the market in the Power Platform space. KPMG, CapGemini, PowerObjects. What are the lessons you've learned working? As in, what are key kind of lessons that you've learned, or key takeaways you've learned with working with these big type of implementation partners?
Yeah, so I think some of the key lessons are like big projects, you have to deliver in a different way to small projects. If you try to deliver a big project in the same way as a small one, you'll end up in trouble. You're creating kind of technical debt. There's always a focus on projects that is about sort of productivity and meeting deadlines, but I kind of view things a different way. I think it's about quality, and if you keep doing things right and creating high standards, working to create quality, then these steps will not slow you down later on. Whereas if you kind of try to go really fast quickly, you'll end up sort of often creating shortcuts and creating things that will slow you down later on. And so some of the things like the DevOps in the project, automate all the builds and releases, creating standards so that everyone really knows what to do and the quality that we're expecting, and sort of not to drop those at any point. I think for big projects, there's a big emphasis on the senior people, and the ability to lead is really necessary on those big projects, because the technical problems are usually more straightforward. You've sort of something technical, like technical requirements, and you've got to deliver those, and you can work those out. But it's the people issues, the projects that have gone wrong. It's usually around people. That's where it comes. And also you want to keep your team engaged, and you want to leverage the team, because I've seen projects where you have some people who want to make all the decisions and they just become a huge bottleneck. And when you've got a lot of people there on a project, it's very expensive to create bottlenecks around people, and you want to help people improve and be really engaged and sort of give everyone the information they need and feel part of the team, and not that they're just sort of being told what to do. Actually, you want the ideas from all of the team, because if you've got a lot of different perspectives, you're going to create a lot better ideas from that collection of people, especially if they're all engaged and enthused. So that's a key part. And I think one of the most important things, I think, is the relationship with the customer, because projects are a collaboration. Basically, you've got the business experts, the customer, the technical experts, and the sort of project experts of the company coming in. But you can't be too much emphasis on one side. You have to be equal partners and create this, and there should be a lot of focus on that. And even in the extent of, you need to, how you present ideas and findings back to the customer, it has to give them confidence that you're doing the right things. And sometimes these aren't always kind of, the emphasis is not put on that. It's just sort of, we'll do this, we'll do our work, and we maybe don't need to show the customer. Actually, you need to show them, really get them on board, because in a project, there's going to be constant changes all the time. You need to be improving all the time, and that's going to take a lot of decisions which you've got to do with the customer. I think my final thing is that every project is different. And so even though some things worked on your previous project, it doesn't mean they're going to work on this new project, because you've got different people, different skills, different industries. And so you've got to find what works on this project. How do we work here? Because I've seen, and like, how do we get to an agreement of what we need to do, and how do we get things signed off and moved forward? And I've seen lots of different ways to do that, but you kind of need to find the way that's going to work on your project, and not just the way that worked on your previous project.
So what have you found has worked effectively for you when it comes to staying one step ahead of your customers? So how do you keep up with technologies? How do you keep up with industries that you might be operating in, right? Because there's always multi-parts to any project. There's an element of knowing the technology. You've got to get a clear understanding of the customer's industry. And then there's the nuances or the soft skills of any, day-to-day project, from the project implementation methodology to, as you talked about application lifecycle management there, making sure that that's standard base and you're putting out a quality product. How do you personally keep developing your own skills in all these areas to make sure that you are always on point, as I say, one step ahead of where your customer is wanting to go, and maintain your level of authority on the subject so you can, consult effectively?
Yeah, I mean, that's a good question, because the Dynamics and Power Platform is always changing is very quickly. So making sure you're delivering the best solution to their requirements is quite challenging. I think that the focus initially should be understanding the industry that they're working in, understand the business, how it works, how do they win, what is not just what they're doing, but what is the purpose behind all these steps they're taking, because you want to avoid just recreating their old system, because that's the common thing, is that you ask, when you're gathering requirements, they tend to basically say how the old system works, but that old system was created around the strengths and the functionality of the previous product. So we don't want to recreate that, but you can't create a sort of a better system, or a system that's going to help the customer a lot, if you don't understand the purpose behind it, how everything works, and what are they doing, why are they doing it. So then once you start to understand those things, you can then, when you see the requirements, you can actually start to improve them and say, do we actually need to do that? And I think the solution is always trying to keep things as simple as possible and deliver what they need. And it's avoiding kind of creating wish lists of stuff that they would be nice. What is the minimum stuff that you actually really need? And let's focus on that, because you want to keep it as simple as possible, two, aligned to out of the box, because that's going to be less testing, less problems, less maintenance, and then you want to avoid adding extra features, because they kind of clutter it up, they add complexity, and they slow the whole project down, because getting projects to be delivered on time means controlling the scope and aligning their requirements to out of the box. And to do that, you need to know what is out of the box, what does it do? And that's why I always think it's a benefit for people to do the certifications in Dynamics. So you know the breadth of what it does, and Power Platform now, what it does, when's a good time to use that, and not, because the danger is that if you don't learn new stuff, you're not keeping ahead, then you'll just keep falling back into what you know and what you're comfortable with. But that may not be the best solution. You need to adapt to the new environment, which is sort of constantly changing.
So how do you keep up with that learning? Like, as you say, when you and I first started in this technology, there was, if you're just dealing in CRM, there was one application, it had 3 modules, customer service, marketing, and sales. And, you could learn the technology, and for 3 years, it wasn't changing, right? There'd be some patches and some updates and things like that, but not really any quantum change. Nowadays, there's around 30 applications in the suite of products. There's always something, 800 odd features per year coming out in the applications, and 2 trunks a year. How do you maintain your technology edge?
Yeah, so there are a few ways. So one of the best ways, I think, is learning from people in your own company or in the community. It's always useful to hear about technology being applied in real life examples, because then you've got a real understanding of what it can do and how it's used, and what problems someone else used it to or what requirements they used it to deliver to. So and people are kind of useful. They're walking information and examples of new technology. So I always try to use my colleagues. LinkedIn seems fairly useful now. It puts millions of people passing certifications, but in amongst those, there's a lot of good, useful information. At Twitter, I follow a few. I have a list of people, and then I have a few keywords. I kind of follow those as well. And conferences are quite good. Going to those, there's lots of different presentations. You can get a good idea of what new stuff's coming in. Yeah, and then just searching out the interesting articles and interesting stuff. I mean, in Dynamics and Power Platform is quite fortunate, where it's always had a lot of people sharing a lot of stuff that they're doing day to day. So you can see these examples, and it's sort of looking out. I mean, Microsoft have a few examples, but they seem a bit sort of forced. It's those real life examples. Like I saw a good one so I was wondering about kind of bots and those chat bots and things like that. And someone said that they had an example where someone I was interviewing, actually, he said that it was like Rightmove or so, and they would have people would come to the website and they'd have a bot, and it would just ask them a few simple questions like, are you actually looking for a property now? And if they said yes, they'd ask another question, and then they'd put them through to a real person and leave the people alone. So they'd have 1,000 people visit like every hour, and using this bot, they could get the top 100 people and put them to a person. And it's sort of like, that is a really useful way of using that to sort of filter, basically get the hot leads and put them through to someone, and then that person can try and sell to them, rather than waste your time trying to pick out of all 1,000 and sort of trying to get them all there. So those kind of examples are really useful of how we can use technology in really ways that to its strengths.
Mm-mm-mm. Do you have any kind of techniques that you use when you're moving onto a project in let's say a totally new industry? Is there anything that you go, you know what, I need to kind of understand the lingo of this industry, or I need a kind of high level but to some detail understanding of how this industry operates? What are your kind of tools, techniques that you use to get enough industry knowledge under your belt to be able to, go toe to toe with a customer?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the key. The key point is using the same language as the customer, because each industry has its own way of speaking, and even like Dynamics has its own way of speaking in entities, and that there's always at the start of a project, the customer doesn't often understand what you're saying because you're speaking in Dynamics language, and it's not always words that everyone uses, and then also the customer doesn't use. So I often look for, see if they've got any business processes and see if you can find those. And I often look at different their website and different other customers' website in the same industry and seeing what they're doing and how understanding how they do business. How do the good companies win? What's their goal? And look for the language that they're using there and trying to pick it up. I think once you understand the goal of an industry, then you can start to think about how the solution could work. Because you see that people who don't take the time to look at the industry and how it works and the language, their requirements are written technically, and they miss lots of bits out because they don't understand what it really needs to do.
Yeah, totally makes sense. If you were to look at Looking Glass and your experience of the last 10 years and looking forward at the next 10 years for Microsoft Biz Apps, where do you see it going? What are areas that you're, predict is going to happen and going to be focuses for you?
So I think the companies really seem to be embracing the no-code, low-code solutions that we're coming up with. And I think there's a change, whereas before it used to be kind of big, large applications, big, large Dynamics applications that did lots of stuff, and then you'd start to bolt other things inside that. Well, I think they could change now, because even like environments, you only pay for your data now, so the number of environments you have changed. But instead of creating these big, large apps, people will be creating maybe lots of more smaller, focused apps, and then sort of a solution will be made up of lots of different smaller apps, and then you can connect them up with connectors much more easily. And I think companies will start to actually do their work, pick up this work themselves, and start to sort of build some in-house skills in there once they realize actually to create your own apps and power apps and flows, you just need to think about what you need to do, and then you can connect them up. But this may also cause a bit of problems, because part of the discipline of being a consultant and especially a developer is that you create things in a consistent way, which means that when you sort of scale up, you can still do it. Whereas you may have companies who created lots of different things themselves and then actually find they've got themselves in a bit of a tangle with things overlapping, and rather than have one sort of maintainable collection that's sort of standardized, you could have lots of different quality, different ways of doing stuff, and then it'll actually be quite difficult to maintain all that. So then maybe the projects will come in and sort of simplify this collection of stuff into a more standard approach. And then maybe once after that's done, you'll sort of, the cognitive services and AI and bots, or maybe they'll start to come in and be used more. Some people might fear that could replace people, but I think it's different really. They help do the more boring stuff to allow people to do what they're good at, which is kind of the relationships and direct contact with people. So kind of how I see things going, but yeah, I'm not quite sure. I've not seen too much. It still seems to me that people are trying to just implement the out of the box, sort of get their system up before moving on to this kind of AI, cognitive services, and those machine learning type of stuff to add on. But I think maybe these will be a bit easier in the future, so perhaps we'll see more of that stuff.
Yeah, true. One of the things is to say, I was down in New Zealand years ago when I first came across you. You're operating in the UK, and you've always been somebody that's been quite prolific online in the community. Tell me, what's your experience with the community and how you engage with the wider community, sharing your knowledge, that type of thing?
I think that's always been one of the real bonuses of Dynamics and now Power Platform is that the community is very, very helpful. You don't, and it's full of people contributing. When I started out in like 2010, there wasn't lots and lots of people there. There wasn't loads of blog posts or information. Now maybe we've got the opposite. There's so much. It takes more time to find the really good bits. Yeah, I mean, I always found that I just wanted to share my knowledge. I thought the purpose was to sort of help me learn. I think the best way to learn is to teach people, and that's kind of what I was doing on my blog. I also use it as kind of like an online brain where all these problems I had, I would put on there, and then if I forgot, I could go back and search. It's much easier to search my blog than search my brain sometimes. So it was good to put all those things on there. Again, I think I just kept trying to consistently create material and learn things and share my knowledge.
So you've obviously had a lot of engagement with the community. You're well known in it. And, I'm big on personal branding. Did you intentionally go out to build a brand? And what have your kind of lessons learned from that journey?
See, I had a kind of few phases, really. Initially, I was just trying to kind of create content and build up my following. And I did that by posting a lot. But initially, it was posting. It was like sharing key updates and sharing other people's blogs. And that was useful. And it was high. It was putting those good posts and good information into people. But I got to a point where I thought, what's the goal of my blog? And it was to help me learn and to help other people. So I kind of changed then to go just to focus on writing more quality pieces and bits where I would learn more and where I would need to do more thinking. I'd often use it as a term to think about how things had gone on a project, and the effects of some decisions and what would I do differently, and sort of work out how I would like to do things if I could do things again. So I would aim to create more useful posts at that point. It's like, do I want to be known as someone who just creates lots of stuff and highlights other people's stuff, or do I want to be someone who creates good stuff myself? So I thought I'd be better to create good stuff myself where I would get more benefit out of it and other people would get more benefit out of it. So I kind of tried to create more timeless posts. Like, I think a good blog post is one that's good today and good in a year's time, so you can come back and think, yeah, that's still actually really useful. So I kind of tried to aim to do that and just try to write often, I think, because I didn't want sort of perfect to be the enemy of good. I'd like to just give yourself a sort of a deadline and get something out there, And a lot of people initially get a bit worried, I think, to sort of release stuff and think about, maybe the criticism they'll get, or other people may think it's not very good. But I think just get it out there, and actually you'll find there's not much to worry about.
I like it. What about social media, particularly, if you look at the various channels you touched on LinkedIn and Twitter before, YouTube. If somebody's new coming into this industry and they're creating content on their own blog, and sometimes it can be overwhelming to look at all the different social media channels. What's your advice? Is it stick with one and become a master of one and maybe listen on the others? What's your experience with social media?
I think it's about what works for you and how, because I did sort of YouTube for a bit, but then I found it took more effort to create videos. It's sort of more concentrated effort, whereas I never got enough time to do that, I found. So whereas writing, you can write a bit, do some other stuff, and then write a bit more. So I kind of did that. And I think, so then, I think you try things and see if they work and see if the tools fit with you. And then doing that, I found that I think I like Twitter because you can tweet stuff and you can just sort of fire and forget about it in a way. But you can watch to see how many people are, is it being effective? Am I, writing the right things? Am I appealing? and you can join communities and find out what social media works for you. But I would say don't worry about it too much. It takes time, so you just kind of got to keep plugging away, build up a following. And if you want people to come and consume whatever you're creating, then you need to give them a reason to do that. So the best way to do that is to create a habit. So, if you create posts, every week, then people will get into that habit and they can come and consume that as part of their weekly habits. So you just want to be consistent and give it time, and don't worry. Don't try and do things too quickly, because it does take time for you to build up a kind of following, and that happens by sort of creating a lot of good content where people actually want to come and read your stuff or listen to your things.
I like it. It's been interesting talking to you. I always like to finish these sessions with some quick fire questions. So are you ready for your random questions?
Yeah.
Okay, here's your first one. Which piece are you when you play Monopoly?
Oh.
What's your favorite piece?
I think is it the top hat?
The top hat? Nice. The bowler hat, right? It's a bowler hat. Oh, no, it's a top hat. It's a top hat. You're right. No, it is a bowler. Okay, I can't. I think it is a bowler hat. It is a bowler hat. Anyhow, if you could only drink one type of alcohol for the rest of your life, what would it be?
Oh, easy, beer. That's pretty much what I only drink.
What's the worst job you've ever had?
It was working in it's kind of like a shop that sold towels and other things and pillowcases, and I just remember folding lots of doilies and towels and working with 3 old ladies.
Classic. What's had the biggest impact on your life? Like a book, a teacher, a mentor? What jumps to mind?
There's probably been quite a few good people. There's 2 books I like reading. So there's, what's his name? Chris Voss, about negotiating.
Ah, yep. Never split the difference?
Yes, yeah. And it's about having empathy. That kind of really made a difference to me, because it was before you kind of like, I'd like to force the conversation, but actually it's maybe more about listening to other people and asking open questions. And one of the best things he's taught me is that open questions are how and what. And if you ask those, people have to think about your answer. And another really good book was Essentialism. And it's just about what is essential, because there's a time where I just found I was doing lots and lots of stuff and more stuff. And I kind of give myself too much stuff to do. And then I kind of stepped back and thought, what is actually essential here? What things can I stop doing? Should I stop doing? And, that kind of made a big difference to my life, I think. So you could just stop doing those other things and focus more on the stuff that's going to be helpful to me and what I should be doing.
Excellent. We'll try and get the links to those in the show notes. Would you rather win a lottery or live twice as long?
I'd probably live twice as long. I don't need lots of money.
What are you most looking forward to in the next 10 years?
I guess probably my kids getting older so I can go out again.
Nice. Back to like life where you didn't have the dependencies, so to speak.
Yes, yeah.
I like it. Ben, before you go, tell us, where can people find your content online? Where do you recommend, if they want to check you out, get to know you a bit more, where should they go?
I usually type in Host CRM to get to my blog, Host Dynamics blog, and I think Ben Hosk on Twitter, and probably find me on LinkedIn as well. They're probably the best ways.
Hey, thanks again for joining me on today's Power Platform show. Full show notes for this episode can be found at nz365guy.com/230. I'm your host, Business Applications MVP Mark Smith, otherwise known as the NZ365 Guy. If you've not had a chance, or you've not taken the opportunity to give me some feedback, and specifically, I'd love an iTunes review if you're up for it. And if you go to nz365guy.com/iTunes, I'll take you straight to the page that you can leave a review. You'll need an Apple ID, to jump in there. I'm sitting at 18 reviews, yet none of them actually show up, and I think the threshold might be 20. So if you want to be one of those 2 people that could put me over the edge with a review, that would be fantastic, because I'd love them to actually show up on the profile. But it's a bit of a black art, this area of podcasting. Nobody knows the number or the trigger point that Apple uses to post those reviews. Anyhow, hope you enjoyed the show. Bye for now. See you next time.